Rome came out of Nero's rule bruised and angry. Then came civil war, and with it a simple question: who had the right to lead? A new family took control, the Flavians, and they needed an answer that people could see, not just hear. They looked at the center of Rome and found a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. Nero's private lake, part of his vast personal pleasure grounds. That lake had not been built for the city. It had been built for one man. In a time of shortages and suspicion, it looked like theft made permanent. The Flavians turned that problem into an opportunity. If power had been taken, it could also be returned. The decision formed quickly and carried a clear message. This space would no longer serve imperial luxury. It would be reclaimed and given back to the public. So the plan was not just to remove a lake, it was to replace it with a monument that gathered Romans together and put the new rulers at the center of public life. A vast amphitheatre would rise where water had reflected Nero's private world. It promised games, crowds, and a controlled kind of generosity. The point was political as much as practical. The Flavians built legitimacy by building on the ruins of indulgence. Under Vespasian, the water vanished and the old lake bed turned into a worksite. The first challenge was simple and brutal. The ground had once been soft, and a giant arena could not float on mud. Crews cut down into firm earth, then packed in layers of rubble and mortar. A broad ring of concrete began to form. It looked plain. It changed everything. Now, the building demanded materials on a scale Rome had rarely coordinated. Travertine blocks arrived from quarries at Tivoli. Tuff and brick came from other districts, lighter but strong. Lime, sand, and volcanic ash fed the concrete mixes. Nothing moved by accident. Roads, carts, and barges had to run like a schedule because one missing shipment stopped hundreds of hands from working. With the foundation set, the amphitheatre finally started to rise above ground. Teams worked in repeating patterns, laying the next courses, while others prepared the next loads. Heavy stone demanded cranes, pulleys, and disciplined lifting. Concrete cores locked the walls together as the ring climbed. This was not just building big, it was planning a machine of construction and keeping it moving day after day. As the walls climbed higher, the building stopped being just a pile of stone and concrete and became a plan for human movement. The architects locked in the ellipse not for beauty, but for control. A rounded shape avoided dead corners and kept every seat facing the same focal point. With each new level, the structure imposed order. It told people where to sit, where to look, and how to flow. Seating became a map of Roman society, built into the architecture. The closest tiers belonged to the most important spectators, while higher levels pushed the less privileged farther away. This separation was not left to chance or argument at the gate. Entrances were numbered, routes were assigned, and the building itself sorted the crowd. A person's status matched a specific path, and the path ended at a specific bench. The stair systems did the rest. They divided people into streams, then broke those streams into smaller channels. So tens of thousands moved without collapsing into one dangerous crush. The goal was speed in both directions, filling the seats quickly, then emptying them just as fast. In practice, the amphitheatre operated like a machine. It absorbed a crowd, held it in place, and released it on command. In 80 CE, the building stopped being a project and started being a weapon of politics. Titus, now emperor, inaugurated the new amphitheatre with opening games meant to be impossible to ignore. He did not just cut a ribbon, he put Rome's crowds inside and proved the machine worked. The message stayed simple. The emperor provided, the city received, and everyone saw who controlled the greatest public stage. The games ran as a flood of organized spectacle. Events followed events, built to hold attention and to leave no space for doubt. By paying for it all, Titus turned entertainment into proof of power. Every seat filled meant the entrances, stairs, and rules of the place held under pressure. This was the first real test of the amphitheatre as a system, and it passed in the only way Rome cared about. And once the opening games succeeded, the meaning of the Colosseum changed. It no longer stood as stone and planning. It operated. It produced crowds on command, then released them again, and it made violence feel like a gift from the state. Rome learned what this arena could do: gather tens of thousands, focus their emotions, and tie that experience to one name at the top. The amphitheatre became an instrument, not a monument. After the opening celebrations ended, the arena did not go quiet. It settled into a schedule. Rome needed trained fighters on demand, and that meant schools that worked like supply chains. Men practiced, healed, and returned to fight again because the shows had to keep coming. The games stopped being a rare event and started being regular programming. The amphitheatre became a place that demanded steady inputs every week. Then there were the animal hunts, the venationes. These did not happen by accident. Exotic beasts had to be captured, shipped, fed, and handled long before they reached the sand. That work created jobs and contracts, from traders to keepers, all tied to one purpose: staged danger for a crowd. The point was not sport in any modern sense. It was power made visible, with nature dragged into Roman control. Executions completed the system. Courts punished, and the arena displayed the punishment as a lesson. Condemned people died in front of thousands, and the state turned law into theatre and fear into entertainment. It sent a message that reached further than any announcement. Authority decided, and everyone watched the outcome. By then, the amphitheatre supported an economy that fed on bodies, animals, and sentences. Death became scheduled, and Rome paid for it. Under Domitian, the arena stopped being just a flat stage. Beneath the sand, workers carved out a whole second world. Corridors, storage spaces, and narrow routes that connected every part of the show. Animals and equipment no longer waited in the open. They stayed hidden, close, and ready. What the crowd saw above looked simple. What made it happen grew complicated, and it stayed out of sight. This underground system, the hypogeum, ran on muscle, wood, and rope. Cages rolled into position. Winches tightened. Platforms rose. Trapdoors opened exactly where they needed to. A beast appeared without warning, not because it was trained, but because it was delivered like cargo. The timing changed everything. The arena became controllable, and surprise became something the organizers could design. With the hypogeum in place, the shows grew more layered. Different acts followed each other faster, because the next one waited below, already staged. Handlers moved animals without crossing the sand. Weapons and scenery arrived at marked points, lifted up on cue. Even danger looked more sudden, more chaotic, while it was managed step by step underneath. Domitian's upgrade turned spectacle into a machine, and the sand became a lid. 8. In the 2nd century, the Colosseum did not simply stand, it worked. Day after day, crowds pressed through its passages. Animals and men moved through its machinery, and every part of the building took stress. Small failures piled up fast. A broken stair, a weakened beam, a damaged gate. Each one threatened the next show, and each one demanded attention. Maintenance became a constant task, because constant use created constant damage. Then bigger shocks arrived. Fires tore through sections that depended on wood, and sudden earthquakes cracked and shifted heavy masonry that had seemed immovable. Repairs followed, not as one grand project, but as urgent decisions made under pressure. Builders replaced what failed, reinforced what looked risky, and adjusted features that no longer matched how the arena operated. The goal stayed simple: keep it open, keep it safe enough, keep it working. By the 3rd century, the Colosseum had changed in a new way. It stopped being a finished masterpiece and became a monument in cycles. Damage, patching, improvement, and back again. The building absorbed the empire's instability in stone and mortar, and it survived by adapting. Each restoration left traces of a different moment, a different problem, a different solution. The Colosseum remained functional not because it stayed perfect, but because it kept being rebuilt. By late antiquity, the empire no longer ran on the same promises. Money, manpower, and attention moved toward borders, crises, and survival. The big public shows began to look less like strength and more like expense. Gladiator schools found it harder to recruit, train, and replace fighters. Animals became harder to capture and ship. The calendar of games thinned out. What once felt unstoppable started to slow. This change did not happen in a single law or a single year. It came through decisions that quietly stacked up. Emperors preferred spending that supported the army and the administration, not the sand. City elites who once paid for spectacles looked for safer ways to gain status. The crowd still gathered when games appeared, but the machine behind them weakened. The Colosseum remained huge, yet it no longer drove Rome's public life. Eventually, even the final performances ended. The last known spectacles closed the book on an institution that had shaped the city for centuries. Without regular games, the arena's original purpose collapsed from the inside out. The tunnels, lifts, and staging systems lost their reason to run. Maintenance stopped making sense. The Colosseum did not vanish, but it stopped being Rome's central engine of mass blood sport, and its future changed. In the medieval period, the Colosseum stopped being treated like a monument and started being treated like a supply of ready-made building material. Blocks of travertine and chunks of tuff disappeared from its walls, carried off piece by piece for other projects. Iron clamps that once held stones tightly together got pried out and reused. The amphitheatre still stood, but it got thinner, weaker, and easier to break apart. Then nature added pressure. Earthquakes hit Rome, and the old structure absorbed the shocks, cracking arches and dropping sections that had already been loosened by years of scavenging. Each collapse changed how people used the place. Instead of clearing the damage, they adapted to it. Open passages turned into enclosed spaces. Fallen stone became foundation. The Colosseum shifted from a single arena into a patchwork of usable fragments. Families and local powers moved in and claimed parts of the ruin, not for entertainment, but for control. Inside the old ring, rooms became housing. Corners turned into workshops and storage. Sections of wall worked like ready-made fortifications, strong enough to defend a private hold in a contested city. The building's purpose reversed. It served daily survival and power struggles, and it paid for them in stone. In modern Rome, the Colosseum no longer served whoever held power inside it. It served the public, and it needed protection. Engineers and conservators stabilized cracked masonry and weakened arches, because a famous ruin still collapsed like any other if it was ignored. Archaeologists studied the layers left by centuries of repairs and damage, and each investigation changed what people thought they knew. The monument stopped being a leftover and became a managed site. Management brought a new kind of crowd. Millions arrived each year, not to watch death, but to understand a building that once organized it. Tours and exhibits explained entrances, seating, and the machinery beneath the arena because the structure's genius lay in control of movement, of sound, of surprise. Yet the same systems also supported execution and slaughter. The Colosseum turned into a lesson, and the lesson never stayed comfortable. That discomfort drove debate over what the Colosseum meant now. Some presentations highlighted engineering and scale because people admired what Romans could build. Others insisted the violence could not be softened because the building was designed to make killing orderly, public, and acceptable. As a protected heritage site, it carried modern values of preservation and education, while its original purpose had aimed at something else, legitimacy through controlled death.